what happened during the pandemic, so those who don't know, if
Yeah.
you're living in a cave of some sort, for during the pandemic, because there were certain people who were saying that the virus was caused or made worse by cell technology, 5G technology. Then they started to see this kind of cell technology as like a mass conspiracy to control people and to also kill people off, like to reduce world population, whatever, like all the conspiracies that came around it. And some people took it so far that they went out and actually destroyed some cell towers.
Yeah.
And so there you go. Now you can explain the pattern that manifested itself.
Yeah, because what happens is, I think people grasped onto, like, they had a symbolic intuition for real patterns that occur at the psychological and also sociological scale. But because we're not very good at detecting those anymore or treating them as psychological and social patterns, people try to bring them down to the material level, and that's what caused issues. So I can say what are, I think, the valid patterns that occur at the psychological and social levels. So you can even just start biologically, like the fact that cell phone towers allow people to communicate easily by communicating easily with one another, having internet all over the place. You can travel easily. It's easy to do business with other people. So this intercommunication within the world allowed people to like physically move easily and to spread pathogens. So at the biological level, there's at the social level, there's already something there relating cell phone towers and the virus. At a psychological level, there's the fact that there's tons of stuff that had to do with technology and how it made us more inclined for all of the panic that we saw. The fact that we have so much enjoyment possible at our fingertips via our cell phones made people quite willing to just hunker down and stay in their homes, to be very obedient to the government. The government was also much more able to monitor what was going on because technology allows us to communicate so easily. Like the research can spread, like what occurs in China can influence what we do here. And then also the government can propagate information quickly. They can tell people, okay, now you need to follow this law, you need to follow that law, and so on. They can even track people with their cell phones to see if they obey or not those regulations. And then we can also add at the communal level as well that we saw a huge social media panic, and this just adds fuel to the fire, where people feel really trapped by cell phone towers. Like, so you can see that there are real patterns from the cell phone towers that occur at the social and psychological levels.
Yeah, because such a huge part of the COVID thing and the lockdown was based on media and information. And like you said, our willingness to accept the lockdown. Because I mean, can you imagine just 30 years ago, maybe, or 40 years ago, the idea that the government could have imposed this so easily on everybody would have just been impossible. The internet made it possible for people to work from home, made all these things possible, which made us accept the statement of the pandemic and the panic, all of this together. And so so the idea that that cell technology was part and all, even in a way, a cause of the situation was absolutely true. There's no way to deny it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, so we can see the cell tower as a symbol because it's a physical artifact. It exists at the physical level. It's a real tower made of metal and plastics and so on. But it mediates also with the psychological and social levels because it participated in the social patterns that fueled the COVID crisis. So I think conspiracy theorists who blame the cell phone towers for the virus, or at least for part of the virus, will intuit this thing, and it's a valid intuition to start off. But rather than seeing this as a properly social and psychological phenomenon to which you need to provide a psychological and social answer, they cast it down to the physical layer because that's what we tend to do. As we discussed, it's only been in the last few decades that we've been starting to rediscover like Neoplatonism and those different theories that incorporate potential and form at different layers of being. So it's not surprising that people would cast down the social problems that they intuit from the cell towers, and that they would cast them down into the language of physics. But this, you can see that, okay, and you can contrast this with what happened, let's say, to the Israelites, because they would do something similar from time to time. They would notice that there was something breaking up their social and psychological patterns. Like maybe they were worshiping a golden calf and it's causing all kinds of trouble. So they would get rid of that golden calf, but it's not the whole thing they would do. They wouldn't just like burn the calf down and then hope that because they burned it down physically, then all of a sudden things will be okay. They also reinstated other practices to gather themselves together. So it's not just a physical problem; it's a social problem. You need a social solution for it. But I think this is the step that the arsonists don't quite get. Things won't just get better because you burn down the cell towers.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of the imagery, it's very powerful because in scripture they call the Asherahs, or the sacred poles. And so there's several moments in scripture where the Israelites kind of give in to building these sacred poles that are dedicated to other gods, and then they destroy the sacred poles. So there's something about the actual visual. You talk about this in your article as well, the actual fact that cell towers appear above us and you see them as these towering things is also part of the problem, or part of the reason why they end up attracting attention in terms of the source of because they're a visible totem of all of technology, of all of media, of all of this kind of strange connectedness that we have through the internet, and also all the problems that come with that, all the social diseases that are related to the internet and to this type of connection. And so, like you said, in a kind of weird intuitive way, there's something that is intuitively, we're not at all saying you should go burn cell towers. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that we can understand the fact that people would have that intuition that, okay, here's an actual image of something which is causing the problem in our society.
Yeah. I think, well, we can even see, I sort of hinted at it in my article, what the actual solution would be to this as a psychological and social problem, and not as a material problem. And one way of seeing it is that by casting the problem in terms of physics, they're not able to see all of the other sides of the social patterns, and they're not able to address the problem correctly. So, cell towers also have good social effects, like the fact that they can allow people to communicate from overseas, the fact that they allow us to communicate now, for instance, the fact that it did allow like experts to exchange information quickly. There's good sides to this phenomenon, and the real solution, I think, would have been obvious in societies where symbolism was better practiced. Like if you just consider the fact that there are cities now where the cell phone tower is higher than the highest church tower.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, like cell phone towers, like they fragment people physically. They're a symbol of the technology that fragments us physically.
Yeah.
Isolates us.
They physically isolate us, just like the people, just like the virus ended up doing.
Yeah, and it's the opposite from what the church used to do. Like the highest point in villages, that used to be the church, where people would gather, they would worship together and knit close bonds. So people would come. So you can see, we went from a place where communally we would gather around the highest point, which was the church. Now the highest point is the cell phone tower, and it fragments us. And the solution is to, well, it's a social solution. At the social level, what we need to do is we need to like build communities that will build churches that go higher than our cell phone towers. Like that's the social solution. But there's no like quick intervention you can do. It's like to do this, you need to convert people slowly, and it's much more tempting to just burn down the cell towers and hope for the best. But of course, it doesn't work. Because
you have nothing to replace it with.